All right, Ron Chin,
Yep.
Chair of the Board of Canadian Outrigger Racing Association. Over to you.
Okay, thanks everybody for joining us for the town hall today. Today's topic is we're honoring the 2022 inductees to the Canadian Outrigger Hall of Fame. We've got moderating the call, we've got Eric Ages, Val Simmons, Leanne Stanley, and myself. I'd like everybody who's joining the call to mute their microphones. And if you've got a question or comment or some kind of memory to add, please just mention it in the chat, and the moderators will bring it up when there's a gap in the program. So today we've got the 6 inductees. We've got Andrea Dillon, Grace Morissette, Wendy Ray Perkins, Don Mulhall, Rosemary Henry, and Comedy Jane. And I'll hand it off to Graham Galvez, who has spearheaded the Canadian Outrigger Hall of Fame initiative for the past several years. Done a fantastic job with it. He'll introduce the inductees and the various speakers he has lined up to speak on their behalf. Okay, over to you, Graham.
Yeah. Hey, Eric, can you give us some slides here? Maybe not. Share. There we go. Excellent. So we're just reusing the slide deck from last year. So the first few slides are just a preface, and we don't need to cover those so much. But Eric, if you could just kind of work your way down to the slide with our inductees. Yes, right there. The next 3 slides are about our guest speakers, and we really, really want to thank our guest speakers. We reached out to people all across Canada who knew our inductees, and some people were a little camera shy, a little reluctant to stand up and speak, but we weren't looking for our guest speakers to be Hall of Famers or gold medalists, that sort of thing. We were looking for people who knew our inductees well. And I had a great session this morning with Bradley and Penny Seeley from Penticton. And we were talking about one of our inductees. And it was kind of helped me shape this introduction here, is that our CORA Historical Committee has done a pretty good job of getting the facts. We figured out which CORA folks started clubs, started races, racked up medals in IVF, did Molokai, this and that sort of thing. But those are just facts. And what we really want to highlight in this presentation is what it is about that inductee that you've gotten to know and you consider really important qualities and good stories. So and I must say, when I talked with Brad and Penny this morning, I was impressed because they shared my perception of one of the inductees very well. And I'm looking forward to their discussion. So can we flip to the next slide, please? Right. So many of our guest speakers are CORA Hall of Fame inductees. And we're going to start off with Melanie. She's going to be talking about Andrea. And, Mel's got quite the background. She came into the Hall of Fame last year, IVF Sprints medalist. She started Open Ocean Outrigger. She was a CORA board member. She founded Delta Outrigger Club. And what she told us last year about James Van Nostrand, who we lost a few years ago, was incredible, just personal stories. And that's what we're looking for from our guest speakers, is personal stories. We have Hugh Fisher in our Hall of Fame last year, Olympics gold medalist, IVF World Sprints medalist, founded Pemberton Canoe, and he's going to speak for Andrea. We have Susan Mott. She's Falls Creek Racing Canoe Club, Canadian national team dragon boat coach and national team drummer. And I believe each one of these individuals is going to give us a different perspective on Andrea. So we're looking forward to that, and we appreciate their coming forward here. We have Doug Mancell, who was the CORA president in 2007. He actually wrote the Malia MBC, which triggered our whole this whole process, because when we read that article, we realized that there was a lot of history we did not have, and Doug sort of Doug and Grace really helped us build out the whole historical context, which led us to this Hall of Fame. I don't know if Ken Asano is on the line or joining us. He is very camera shy, which surprises me because he has an incredible commanding presence. He's a science teacher. And I wanted to acknowledge him specifically because he is the closest Canada has ever come to bringing home the Peter Ferran Masters Trophy. He finished 5th place in 2019 and is the best a Canadian has ever done at going for that trophy. So if Ken's here, I'd love to hear him speak for Grace as well. Sheila Kuyper, we brought her into the Hall of Fame last year, CORA Hall of Fame, co-founder for Wainui, IVF World Sprints medalist many times, and a champion for inclusion of women in canoe at the Olympics. And that happened last year in Tokyo, finally. We have Nancy Boulding. She provided us a video. She brought the first OC6 to Ontario. She's a founder of Mississauga OCC, co-founder of Wainui, and rear Commodore for Wainui Kanaka forever. Val Simmons, and we cannot say enough for Val Simmons. Because of Val Simmons and the work she did collecting Eastern Canada OC history, we were able to finally realize that Wendy Ray Perkins belonged in this Hall of Fame. And so Val's going to sort of give us that perspective of her personal appreciation of what Wendy has done for Eastern Canada. Now, Laura Mandrell was a little reluctant because, you know, speaking on behalf of her husband seemed a little off, but we did actually find a few people in Penticton who did come forward, and they gave us testimonials, and Bradley and Penny Seeley are going to speak today on behalf of Don Mulhall. And we also have a special video from somebody very close to Don that I think is going to find touching. We have Annie Boulding, Strathcona Park Lodge alumni. And if the Strathcona Park Lodge is unfamiliar to you, I highly recommend you do a little research. There are so many individuals who have been involved with CORA over the years that are alumni from Strathcona Park Lodge. Annie Boulding, Dave Boulding, Sheila Taylor, Joanne Woods, Rosemary Henry, Laurel Archer, the list goes on forever. These people who started at Strathcona Park Lodge and have gone on to incredible achievements. And Annie's in our Hall of Fame as well. She's a founder of Comox, and she brought the Burrard to Canada, which is huge because that OC6, that tugboat of an OC6 was the founding canoe for at least 7 or 8 CORA clubs. We have Brian Henry, founder of Ocean River Sports, founder of Current Designs, the BC Outrigger Connection Mirage franchisee, and Rosemary Henry knows him pretty well, and hopefully he comes out from underneath the house and gives us a great story on Rosemary. The other thing that was a little surprising to our historical committee was when we were searching for information on Rosemary Henry, Canoe, Victoria, 2 other names kept showing up, Graham Henry and Russell Henry. And I had to touch base with Rosemary and go, who are these guys? And they are their sons. And if you do a little research on these 2 young men, they are hometown heroes. They paddled 4,000 miles in sea kayaks from Brazil to Florida. They did the race to Alaska in a clipper with 2 Amas. They did the 70-48. And Graham Henry took first place in K1 in the Yukon River Quest. And Andrea Dillon knows what that's like because she's done that event and taken first place with the Falls Creek Women's Crew. And we have Russell Henry, who And he, in 2014, did the fastest Vancouver Island solo circumnavigation in a kayak. He blew 2 to 3 days off the world record. This guy, and nobody has challenged him since. What he did was incredible. And as I said to Rosemary, sometimes the greatest legacy we leave is our children. And those two sons of Rosemary and Brian have left an incredible legacy in what they've achieved so far. And it'd be great if they would hook up with an outrigger canoe club and do great things for them. And then our last guest speaker is Leanne Stanley. She's with Kelowna right now. She's been on the CORA board forever, longer than me. She's part of the IVF committee, which has led to some incredible results the last few cycles. And she too is an IVF World Sprints medalist umpteen times. So we have some people with some incredible credentials coming today to this event. And we're looking for those stories, what it is about our inductees that just drew you to them. So we're going to go to our first inductee, which is Andrea Dillon, and we're going to ask Mel Whittall to speak first, and then Hugh Fisher, and then Susan Mott. So Mel, please share with us some thoughts about Andrea.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Graham, and thank you, Graham, for one moment. And can everyone see me? Can everyone see me?
Yep, you're visible.
Yes.
Don't worry about all
Okay,
of
good,
you.
good. Okay, so yeah, thank you very much, and thank you, Graham, and welcome to the CORA Hall of Fame Awards. I am deeply honored to give one of my very best friends, Andrea Dillon, a woman I worked with for about 10 years also. And I had that incredible experience of working with this very, very special person. I met Andrea the first time in 1993 at Eco Marine Ocean Kayak Center on Granville Island. And I was just a bit of a young thing, and I was taking up ocean kayaking. I was working there as a job, and we were going to do a product knowledge, and this person, Andrea, was going to come in there. She was going to talk to us about kayak paddles. And she came in, it was 7:30 in the morning, and she filled the room. And such energy and such good cheer, and she was kind and funny, and so she was started in on her talk about aquabound paddles. And so she talked all about the load of the paddle and the spline and the water distribution in the pull phase and all the rest, and this thing called the catch. And I'm like, catch, pull, exit, really? I'm like, what is she talking about? I didn't know anything about this. I had no idea. Well, I needed to know everything she knew. She just filled you with, when she did a product knowledge, she filled you with like just this incredible amount of information, but possibility. She really wanted you to become a much, much better, not only person who sold things, but a better paddler yourself. And I was hooked. And I thought, I want to know all about this. This is so important. I really want to know all about this. And before I knew it, I was in a canoe, and I was training 4 days a week. And we were training for a big event in Fiji. And it was the World Championships. And all of a sudden, I was full of this possibility. And I knew that it came with a cost, right? This possibility. It's called expectations. And those expectations were put on to us as being something that we could achieve, something that was maybe great. And so you bought the Kool-Aid and you got into it. And we were in the boats 4 or 5 days a week. We were learning how to paddle rudderless. This was for the 1996 Fiji World Championships. We were, we didn't miss a gym. We made every time trial, and every time trial was important. And it was all brand new to me. And there was this promise, this incredible promise of possibility that we could actually go to this world championship and represent Canada. It was way beyond what I ever expected. And I didn't miss a beat, and I hung on everything that was happening, and I learned so much. And Andrea is a person who will take her paddlers through every step of the way. And she believes in you, and she's remarkably generous with her time and with her spirit, and she's generous with her information and all of her coaching. And she is a great coach, definitely a great coach. So we trained like demons, and it was the first of many international events I did with Andrea Dillon. And she's in your corner, and she's in your corner completely. And you have to believe that you have to go through every single step of the way and train in absolute completeness to be able to go to that line and know that you have a chance. And I remember at the Worlds in Nottingham, this is Dragon Boat, this is years later, we went to the line. And that day that we went to the line, Andrea, she was skipping around. She had a, sense of humor. She was chatting with people. Her work was done. She had gotten us there. It was up to us. And it was up to us to be able, as a crew, to be able to prove what we thought, that we were that good. And when you are training at that level and with that intensity, it changes you. All of a sudden, all your friends are paddlers. And all the people that are non-paddlers, well, you don't see them very often anymore. And you kind of think, that they kind of think that you're kind of obsessed. Well, you are obsessed. The most beautiful obsession. So here we were on the line, and it was up to us. It was up to us to be able to prove to her, because you didn't want to let Andrea down, ever, because she had been in your corner the whole way. Anything can happen on any given race day. We all know that. So you may not win the gold medal that day. And we didn't. We didn't win the gold medal. But forever, you'll be changed. And you're changed because you now know that anything is possible. And you have the ability to reach that possibility. Andrea has that special gift of giving that to you. Where did she get that from? Well, her dad was an admiral in the Canadian Navy, and his job was to inspire our Canadian forces to achieve great things and to find bravery. And she is probably cut from the cloth of her dad. So it is an honor for me to give to you a very dear friend and a person who's kind and generous and funny and always will say that it's sunny by the bridge. And you will die on your sword for her. So 2022, CORA Hall of Fame, I give you Andrea Dillon, who is really, truly the admiral of our fleet.
Oh my.
Congrats, Andrea.
That was beautiful, Melanie.
Andrea, I got to work with Andrea for about 10 years working in the outdoor industry, and we shared so many fun times and so many maybe not so fun times. There's a lot that we have done together, a lot of road that we have shared together, that is for sure. But her job as a sports rep and her job as a coach and she is a paddler, all those lines they've mixed in with one another all the time. And it was just, it didn't matter whether she was giving a product knowledge on darn tough socks, or she was coaching at the premier women. She was going to give you 100% of herself, because that is who she is. She's a remarkably generous woman. And we are very, very thankful to have her, because there is probably not a paddler that is more decorated with more wins and more depth than our Andrea. So thank you, Andrea. Unmute yourself.
Thanks, Mel. I'm humbled.
Oh, you've touched scores of paddlers. That is for certain. And scores of paddlers have gone through the same process I went through. That is for certain. And you have changed them. And that's why these paddlers are so damn good.
You've made us all better.
Yeah. Definitely.
Well,
so the thing that I would like
can
to know,
hardly
Andrea,
wait
do you
to
have
hear.
a set of spoons? Could you I'm wondering if you could hang some spoons off your nose. Andrea, you there?
I'll do that in our extra time. I'm still champion at that, and that's my biggest achievement. Thank you.
Hugh and Susan, would you like to chime in?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Taking over here. So I think, do you hear me now, everyone? So for me, what Mel just said about generosity is what I think characterizes Andrea more than any other word. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that too, about her generosity. I had a little look at my plaque that I'd won last year on it, and it says significant and exemplary contribution to outrigger paddling. And I don't think that there's a person in outrigger paddling in all the history of our sport in this country that has made a greater contribution than Andrea did, and a more significant contribution and a more exemplary contribution. And I think we all stand on her shoulders. All that have come after stand on her shoulders. The reason I'm giving this talk is I kind of made the mistake last year of saying, how come Andrea's not being inducted into the Hall of Fame? And so here you are, and I congratulate you on this occasion. In 1992, we already had a thriving outrigger community in Vancouver. Colin Shaw and I had gone off and raced in Molokai in, I think, around 1978, and brought back outrigger paddling. It's why I fell in love with outrigger paddling. And by 1992, we had tons of races, a good, strong community. There'd been many, many Canadian teams that had gone over and raced in Molokai. And for us, I think Molokai existed as this Hawaii, Tahiti, Southern California race. And that's what we aspired to go and do. In 1988, I went off to New Zealand to do my internship in medicine, and I was lucky enough to be part of a dragon boat team in a place called Kawerau in New Zealand, living in a place called Wakatani, which means in Maori, woman paddling like man. And there's a huge story around that in outrigger paddling in New Zealand. But anyway, we raced and got to be a very good dragon boat team. And then in 1990, the World Sprints were going to be held in Auckland as part of the Treaty of Waitangi celebrations. And I took some of our dragon boat paddlers, and we built a really good outrigger team in Wakatani, and went off and raced at the Worlds. And I could just see at that World Championship that there was so much more to outrigger racing than what I had been exposed to in racing in Hawaii and Molokai. and brought that back to Canada in 1991. Met some amazing people in the outrigger. In those days, it wasn't the IVF, it was the International Outrigger Association. And met Mary Jane Kahanamoku, whose dad was Duke Kahanamoku, and many, many other people. And they were very, very supportive of us getting a Canadian, like, where's Canada? How come we're not there? So when I came back to Canada in 1991 in the spring, I was just determined, because the World Championship was going to be in California, in Sacramento, the following year, to get to that World Championship, to race in IVF racing, in sprint racing. And but what I knew was that we couldn't do that unless we had a Canadian Outrigger Association of some kind. And that was the only way that we could participate. And so Andrea by this time was, a real mover and shaker in paddling in Vancouver. I think she'd already been hugely important in Falls Creek and developing outrigger racing around Vancouver, and certainly in Dragon Boat she was coaching as part of the dynasty of Falls Creek Racing Canoe Club's many wins in Dragon Boat racing and coaching. And it seemed like she would be a really important person to sit and talk about this. So I famously sat down with her, well, famous in my mind anyway, sat down with her and on Falls Creek, and we talked about the possibility of racing the following year in Sacramento. So I think that would have probably been midsummer in 1991, and worked out a strategy. Now, by this time, I knew that I was hopeless at doing any kind of organizing. And basically, Andrea took it from there, and along with Gary Mancell and several others, came up, did all of the work that eventually became the Canadian Outrigger Association. And so all of the things that exist today in the Canadian Outrigger Association, the elections, the vote, all of that is work that Andrea had done, and she got us to the Worlds in 1992. We had men's teams present, women's team present, and at every World Championship since then, we've had strong Canadian teams and won, many medals. Andrea went on and became a great coach in outrigger racing, and Mel has talked about that. I'd also just like to mention, like, her generosity. Like, when we started up our canoe club in Pemberton, we needed a lot of stuff. There wasn't any paddling going on here, and Andrea's who I reached out to. And I remember she showed up when we have a much longer winter than Vancouver does. She showed up with a dozen kids' paddling jackets. She donated so much Patagonia equipment to us. I think I still even have some now. And that's just the kind of person. When we'd have good paddlers who wanted to go on and paddle after they'd finished our school program, I'd contact Andrea, and she would mentor them and take care of them in Vancouver. So I do feel that this is, really important, that she's very important to be remembered as part of the Canadian in the Canadian Hall of Fame. And as I say, I don't think that there's another person who more deserves to be named as a member of the Canadian Outrigger Racing Association Hall of Fame. Just a couple of other little brief notes. I think Andrea's first OC1 was my old yellow OC1 that I made. I traded it with her for a set of ski poles. I still have the ski poles. I think, I don't know where that boat ended up. I think she told me one time it went to the garbage dump. When my daughter got very sick, Andrea was there and helped. So, I do have do have just the greatest respect for Andrea and her contribution to this. Drew Mitchell once said to me, we were leaning, you know how you can lean out and look across the bay down there at False Creek and see all those boats out on the water. And Drew said to me, he said, look what you've done. And I think that those words apply even more to Andrea's contribution to this. I think when you see Leanne or Comedy Racing and bringing home medals, I think it's look what you've done, Andrea. And I think when you see new clubs in Vancouver Island and in the East and Ontario, I think it's look what you've done, Andrea. And you know, and she's pretty cool. I don't know anybody else who lived in a houseboat. Anyway, I think I'll just leave it there. So congratulations, Andrea.
Thanks, Hugh. I'm truly touched, and I will never forget our dinner in New Caledonia, where you did amazing things with napkins, if I remember, and I won't go any further, but you'll remember that one.
I sure do. And you remember those little girls with the sticks who are singing their song? Every one of those worlds that we attended, New Caledonia and Samoa, and you know, and watched Jackie, watched all of the, it's just amazing to be there. Amazing set of memories.
Absolutely amazing. I agree. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Hugh. Thanks, Mel. Both of you. That was amazing. And yeah, I feel like I'm the youngest person out of the whole group to be speaking about Andrea. I'm very honored to speak about Andrea, and congratulations to all of the Hall of Fame inductees today. I'm really honored to speak on my relationship and how I've come to know Andrea. You'll have to excuse, I might have some workers walking back and forth in my view. I hope not. I've asked them to hold off for the next 30 minutes. Although I haven't known Andrea the longest, like so many others, like Hugh and Mel have already expressed, she has made that strong, lasting friendship, guidance, and impression. I first came to know Andrea way back. It feels like way back in 2009, when I first joined like the women's crew of the False Creek High Performance Dragon Boat team, is what it was known back then. I wanted to paddle at the higher level, get the best coaching, which consisted of Andrea and Comedy. Those two, they're two peas in a pod. Back then, like being the new person on the crew, you were hesitant. You were just trying to find your spot on the team, kind of where you fit in, how you fit in. And Andrea was just so approachable. She always did her best to give us her time or attention if we had questions, or she saw that we were beyond nervous when it came to doing time trials, or, you know, always offering us her words of wisdom or words of advice. That year in 2009, I was in seat 9, and behind me, Andrea was in seat 10. So there was like no pressure at all to perform when you've got Andrea Dilling sitting behind you. And we were racing the infamous women's 2K Guts and Glory. And it was my first 2K race. And as a lot of people have attested to, racing the 2K, coming around the last 500 meters, you don't know if you're going to make it for the last 500 meters. And I literally had nothing left on that race. And I think Andrea definitely could sense that. And for that whole 500 meters, she was behind me, encouraging me, one more stroke, you can do one more stroke. And I kept hearing that for 500 meters. And it was what got me through that 2K race. And, you know, I would soon discover that with Andrea, there would be many, many more times like that. She does not give up on her paddlers. In 2012, I earned a spot in Team Canada for the World Outrigger Sprints in Calgary, and I also earned a V1 spot. And while I was training, Andrea was standing out on her dock on the float home, either binoculars in hand or just standing out there. I think she liked to spy on us a lot. And she would encourage, as we were paddling and training, she would always have time for us asking questions. And that year, to help me with my V1 skills, she let me borrow her infamous Montgomery. And I trained in that Montgomery for V1 for my spot in Calgary. And, the skills that I developed, the patience that Andrea had, it went above and beyond. However, it didn't stop there. As my paddling career grew, our friendship and her mentoring, it grew along as well. I moved on to go onto the national team as the drummer, and I was nerves. My very first competition in Hungary, and Andrea wasn't there. She was back in Canada, unfortunately, for work, but she was there. It was after our races, my phone would be beeping because here's Andrea with the god awful time changes. She's watching us on live stream, and she's texting, messaging, calling, offering her words of wisdom, her words of encouragement. And that meant the absolute world to me for my very first international competition in Hungary. I don't think I would have gotten through a lot of that without Andrea's words of encouragement and, just staying up with the awful time changes to do that. And she continued on that, when we were competing in Italy, China, Australia. Unfortunately, with Andrea and her busy work schedule, she wasn't able to be there, and we missed not having her there. But as soon as we got off the water, I'd go check my phone, and there's my phone. It's got messages, call me, different analyzing of the race, or just analyzing of myself as drumming. And I'd pass that information along to the team. And the year we were in Australia, with comedy as well, we had this little fuzzy bunny, and her name was Bunny Chick Dillon. And Bunny Chick Dillon went in the boat with us. Bunny Chick Dillon went everywhere with us in Australia. So it just goes to show that Andrea, when she's not there, her presence is so strong. It's there, and it's there, and it's so appreciated.
Here's Bunny Chick Dillon.
Oh, where's Bunny Chick Dillon? Pull up Bunny
Right
Chick
here.
Dillon. Do you have her, Com? I can't see. I don't have you on my screen.
Okay.
Awesome. And as we all know, Andrea loves her marathon canoe. She lured me into paddling marathon canoe. Hi, Bunny Chick Dillon. That's Bunny Chick Dillon. Bunny Chick Dillon went with us everywhere in Australia, to the after party, to all our meals, to practices. She was there. Like I said, Andrea, she loves her marathon canoe, and she managed to suck me in to start paddling marathon canoe, because in the winter, that's how you stay warm and dry, I found out. And I now have become an avid, no, I'm not getting in an OC1 in the winter. I'm staying in a marathon canoe because I want my feet to stay warm and dry. And she lured a group of us that we formed this small training group, and we affectionately became known as the Marathon Peeps. And for some of us, it became our group therapy. We'd celebrate birthdays every birthday. Emails would go out, and coffee and snacks and treats would get thrown into the marathon canoe, and we would either paddle out and stop at the dock just off Second Beach, or we would find a dock and we would celebrate. And it was celebrating all those memories amongst our friends. And if it wasn't for Andrea encouraging us and kind of dragging us into doing marathon paddling, like that group of us, we wouldn't exist. And as you can imagine, Christmas too, Andrea was famous for Christmas gifts with the Marathon Peeps. And our Christmas gifts, where she had gone out and had ball caps made that said Marathon Peeps on them. And you can imagine on our morning paddles, some of the looks we would get, we'd come in and here's 6 women wearing ball caps that say marathon peeps on them. And people are kind of looking at us going, marathon peeps? What do you mean? It's like, we're the marathon peeps. There's 3 canoes of women. We're paddling. We're having a great time. We're getting some amazing training in, just putting in the miles in the canoe. And when we went out paddling, 99% of the time, it wasn't a leisurely paddle. It was a workout paddle. And we would train hard. We would push each other, but we'd also have fun doing it. So with Andrea, you know, she's built a business. She's built an all women's paddling crew, an all women's dragon boat regatta, you know, the infamous Falls Creek women's regatta. It's known North America and I think almost worldwide now. She is the current Commodore of the paddling club and helping to build that club that is known both nationally and internationally. When we go outside of BC, outside of Canada, people stop to talk to Andrea, and she knows everybody everywhere. It's amazing. And just her reach and how she reaches out to people. Her dedication to the sport and to her athletes, it has no boundaries and no limits. It's like Mel said, she gives you that time and you literally want to fall on your sword for Andrea when it comes to racing and when it comes to performing. She pulls out the best in you and she pulls that from deep down. You know, she's always encouraging and empowering to those around her, and her reach extends worldwide. She's always telling her athletes that it is all about them. Well, Andrea, I'm here to tell you that today, it's all about you. You're the athlete, Andrea Dillon, and don't stop being you. You're an amazing person, and I'm so happy that, you know, you reached out and that we've formed the friendship that we have and the mentoring that we have. And it's just, I love you for it. You're just an amazing person and so deserving of this award. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Susan. And let's have a few words from Andrea. And you're muted, Andrea.
There you go. I mean,
Yes.
great stories. You know, I think that I've never met.
That's better.
Okay. I don't think I've ever met anyone who doesn't have the possibility of being the best they are. And it's certainly never due to one person getting them there. It's that person making the commitment. And for me, I'm involved because of all of you who are here today, of all the people I've either raced or had the privilege of coaching with, because I probably learn more from each individual and it really helps me in my life. So thank you. The other inductees, last year's inductees, and let me tell you, the inductees that are to come are all inspirational, and they are going to drive us forward to be an exemplary community. And on those down days when we don't want to go out and train or coach or whatever, we just have to remember, let's just be out there because there are others who are going to inspire. And that inspiration will keep the legacy going. So thank you.
Wow. I would say that that was pretty amazing. I'm so glad we've been recording all of these so that we can play them back again and recollect everything that was said. Quite the impressive slide there, greatest hits. And we have one of these for each one of our inductees, and they're online in our Hall of Fame slide decks. So Eric, can we introduce our next inductee? And that is Grace Morissette. And interesting enough, I did not know this because Grace never tells us anything about her achievements, is that Grace and Andrea were there in 1992 at the very first time that Canada went to the World Sprints, IPCF as it was called back then. So Doug Mancell, would you care to share us some of your favorite moments with Grace Morissette? And you're muted, Doug.
I know. Yeah. Well, my greatest moments with Grace. I mean, that's a book. There's so many, but my dates will be a bit off here and there, but basically you're going to get the right gist of it all. First of all, Grace is incredibly humble. She doesn't even want this award. This is, this is something that she just does no thought about. It wouldn't be anything that would even enter her mind. And I've raced with her and coached with her and been with her for almost since 1993, and just couldn't express a better partner to be with in any circumstance. I met her first in '93. I would just started paddling after a long hiatus from my flatwater days as a teenager. I was now about 30 or so, and my brothers were having a party for those who had gone to Kona that year. And I saw this woman sitting on the fire hearth, and she had a cast on both arms. Her face was all puffy, and I thought, here's somebody I have something in common with, and I kind of asked my brother to introduce me to her. And so he brought me over there, and I had a talk with her. And some months later, I was quite disheartened to realize that she had no recollection of that conversation. But well, the accident happened. She was on her way to Grace and Kona with the Lotus team. And she had been riding down Moons Creek, which is a very steep hill near sort of on the Bunsen Lake type of area of Whitlam there. Riding down the steep hill, and a car ran her over and hit her. And she had compound fractures in both arms and casts in both arms. So she couldn't go to Kona. And that's, how I met her. And so when Grace still has those titanium plates in her arms, which is incredible because she's, a steers person who torques those arms so much all the time, and an amazing steers person, and has had many exploits in doing just that. So I'm just, I'm humbled by the fact that she can manage to keep going like that. And she never complains about it. Her arms are great. She never has a problem with them, or sometimes she has a problem with them, but you'll never hear her complain about it, anything about that. So. And that's been since 1993, and the titanium's still in there. After that, I used to go to try to date Grace, and I had an old wrestling coach of mine who was at Centennial High School. He was a counselor, and she was a counselor, and they had offices next to each other. So I used to. Under the guise of going to visit my wrestling coach, I would go and try to snatch a conversation with Grace at the school, and she doesn't remember much about those either. Anyway, that was I was determined to get to know her better. So move ahead from there, and Grace, I used to run into her. Actually, prior to that party, I'd run into her. At Lotus when I was training with the men's team. I just started paddling. It was in the winter time, and she was coaching the juniors. And I would, our men would show up at the end of their practice, and sometimes she'd still be there. And I'd see her, and I thought, I'd like to get to know her, but she doesn't remember any of that either. And we both started coaching dragon boat teams. I had my Glen Eagle team, and she had her Centennial team, and they were separate teams. But eventually, they kind of got blended, and we started training them together and bringing the youth along together on those teams. And so that's one of the things that Grace has been doing since probably 1990 or so. She's always had a junior dragon boat team. Every year that there has been one at Alcan, she can always put a team in there. And so she's been involved with the juniors ever since then. And not only that, when we take these juniors on, Grace makes sure that they understand Hawaiian culture. It's very important that they know a boat never touches the ground. They know you never step over a boat. They know these things before they ever go to Hawaii to race. And we do take them there to Hawaii to race. And on that note, we actually had some difficulty because we've been bringing very young paddlers to Hawaii to Queen Lily, and they haven't liked that. But they have let us race there with them and so forth, and they and that. Anyway, so both 1998, Lois went through a great transition where around 98, I'm not sure, my dates are a bit off, but where the CORA left the club. My brother's retired from paddling, and with that, people moved away and people went back to other clubs, and I was number 10 on the ladder at that point. And then when everybody left, I became number 1 on the ladder because we just, so the reason I talk about that is that we decided the energy of the club went towards a mixed, more of a mixed competitive team, because we didn't really have the numbers to put a good men's team in and a good women's team. But if we combined our best women and our best men, we had a good mixed team. So so that's what we did, and that's when I don't think that we lost the mixed race for a decade or more. We were and Grace steered every race. She ironed almost every race, even change races, Kona, Catalina, you name it. She steered the whole thing, never got out of the boat, and was strong all the way, always strong all the way. Got stronger as the race goes on. In my racing OC2 with her, our second half of the race was always our best. We always picked off boats in the second half of the race. And I learned something in those races too, never question Grace, because she knows the water. She knows the currents. She knows the waves. There were times when I thought we should have gone inside and ridden waves closer to shore. And we went outside and caught the current. And I watched as we passed all the boats that went inside and rode the waves on the shore, type of thing, right? All these things happened all the time. One special story that was the Canadian Championships in Gibson's. There was an American team up there, a mixed American team from California that came up, and they were a bunch of hotshot paddlers. They weren't a team as per se, thank God. They were 6 very strong solo paddlers, which you could see the next day in the solo race when they placed very high in all of the categories that they raced in. And except for one of them, of course, who fell out of his boat and got hypothermia and had to be dragged out of the race. But anyway, in that race, we took off, and we led for about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and that American team caught us, and they passed us pretty quickly. But they were taking different courses, and we were taking different courses, and we always kept them within our reach. And finally, we rounded the last turn, not last turn, but you're shadowed by a big island in Gibson's there, and you're heading towards, back towards the mainland. And they went inland, and we went outland, and they were about a minute ahead of us at that point. And we went outside, and I thought, Grace, what are you doing? They're going into the shelter of the island. We're going out into the waves and the chop and the wind. What are you doing? And sure enough, when we got to the buoy for the turn, for the final sprint to the finish, we were about 3 boat lengths ahead of them. And they didn't, and then they were catching us all the way to the finish because they were incredibly strong, but they ran out of real estate, thank God. And in the end, we were about a half a boat length ahead of them for that race. So just things like that. Grace is always thinking. She's always, where's the current? Where are the waves? Where's the wind? And so forth. And if we go inside on this boat, what's going to happen with the boat on the far side of us? And she's always thinking all the time in the race, planning out the race. Just a wonderful, wonderful person to paddle. Let me see, my notes came out of my view here. Anyway, I don't need notes. Yeah, so on that note, what can I say? The most important thing for Grace is not winning the race. It never has been about winning. It's always been about culture and about instilling the love of the sport to the youth. Okay, we still, even after COVID, I thought our youth program would die, but we've got a really strong program going again now. And Grace is really excited with this group also. We're taking them to Kona next year. Grace is taking them to Kona next year, I should say. Along with, a couple of Tony Vukazovic, who's another coach we have with the juniors there and so forth. So, yeah, on that note, I can't say enough about this woman. She's just been a great, what do you call it, mentor for so many of our youth paddlers. And there's no other program, I don't think, in this country that has had as strong a youth program for 30 years as we've had at Lotus. And that's all on Grace. That's all on Grace. That's about it for me.
So Doug, can I just say a little something here before we hand it over to Grace? And Grace, what drives me nuts about you is how humble you are, because Ron Chin and I went to that Lotus poker paddle last year, and we tried to get you to stop doing what you were doing and award you that Hugh Town trophy. It took us to the end of the day before you finally had nothing left to do. And you had nothing left to do but come and do the photo op with us. And then we did the Hall of Fame presentation for you there at this race. Again, Lotus poker paddle. And I know we had to resort to subterfuge to get you to accept that plaque. And I think everybody at your club appreciates everything you do. But you need to step up once in a while and just accept that people appreciate everything you do. So Grace, please take the mic.
Thanks so much, Graham. It's not like me to want the spotlight or anything, but I must say it really is an honor to get this award and to be recognized to have made a significant contribution to Canadian outrigger canoeing. I think in some ways, maybe significant means a significant number of years, because I was there, like Andrea, when the first outrigger canoes were made in Canada, when they had the first outrigger race in Canada. Yeah, I'm that old. So back when I started coaching the juniors in the late 80s, I was just about a decade older than the juniors. That quickly turned to 2 decades. And now there are more and more paddlers that I coach whose parents were once in my junior program. It's quite the compliment to be acknowledged for the Hall of Fame, but please know that it's always a team effort. There are so many people who contribute in similar ways because of their love of the sport and because of the culture of outrigger canoeing. I'm continually amazed by people that I've coached with. It's been a privilege over the years. As well as people who I've collaborated with on committees and on boards. There are so many who do so much, and I'm always learning and excited by their enthusiasm. And it's really humbling. There's so many great people involved, and everyone who's on this call right now, everyone who's being recognized, they're amazing. The adage, it takes a community to raise a youth, holds true, especially in the sport of outrigger canoeing. So many people have been really important part of welcoming the juniors. Don Mulhall, you're very well loved by our juniors. You're so funny and always recognize them. You go out of way to include them in races and events. And we realize that some don't continue paddling, but even if for one practice they had fun on the water or they had a positive experience, then we've been successful. So thanks for this recognition. It's very kind and it's very meaningful. And I extend thanks and appreciation to all coaches out there, board members, volunteers, anyone who's organized a race, and all of the athletes. You're just all making significant contributions. Thanks.
Grace, thank you so much for everything that you've done with the youth. And I think that it's part of our sport that we struggle with is engaging our youth, and you've obviously got something that's quite special. So whatever you do, let everyone else know how to do it, okay?
I think it's the really cute coaches I work with.
Ah, that's it. Oh, cute coaches. Okay.
Thank you, Grace.
Those coaches, by the way, were her youth at one point.
So Eric, who's up next? Auntie Wendy Ray Perkins. Oh my God. And it's not many people that have that moniker, Auntie. Leanne, could you play us that video from Nancy as an intro, and then we'll have Sheila step up and give us a talk. Leanne.
Coming.
We are so technology savvy here.
Aloha CORA friends. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of Wendy Perkins' induction into the CORA Hall of Fame. My name is Nancy Boulding, and in 1997, I founded the Mississauga Outrigger Canoe Club, which is now Wainui Okanaka Outrigger Canoe Club, of which Wendy has been Commodore since 2007. Over the last 15 years, Wendy has led our club with unwavering passion, providing opportunities for so many people in our community to get in a boat and enjoy her love of the water. Wendy has grown our club to new heights. She has successfully grown our holidays several times, exploded our program offerings to include kids outrigger, sup, and surf ski summer camps, kapuna, OC6 and double hull paddling, adult OC6 and small boat racing, surf ski, paddle all for adults with youth and youth with disabilities, friends and family social paddles, full moon paddling, and of course our annual Wainui Why Not Regatta. Under Wendy's leadership, both locally and abroad, many have benefited from her generosity in her sharing of her love of our sport. Wendy's network of paddling ohana spreads the world, from Canada to Hawaii to the Cook Islands, Australia, Bora Bora, and beyond. Behind us is our club in downtown Oakville, Ontario, on an inlet on the shores of Lake Ontario, one of our Great Lakes. We are fortunate to be able to paddle in both a river and the lake. We have 4 fenced-in boat compounds for both club and private boats. Our waterfront boat launch has been newly expanded in collaboration with the town of Oakville to include a dock for members and a new separate dock for the public to launch their canoes and kayaks. All of this has been Wendy. She continually looks for opportunities to improve the facility and the program offerings. Wendy's induction into the CORA Hall of Fame is recognition for her leadership in the growth of the outrigger paddling community. Congratulations, Wendy. So fitting an honor for you. Thank you for all that you do to share your love of the water and enrich the lives of so many. Mahalo.
Yay. Great work, Leanne. If you don't know Auntie Wendy Ray Perkins, my God, that's just her greatest hits. Her bio, we had to condense it from like 12 pages down to 2 pages. That's what we do. Somebody's got their mic on, or not on, or not on, but yeah, that's just an incredible of what Auntie Wendy Ray Perkins has achieved over the last 30 plus years here. So Sheila Kuyper, our 2021 Hall of Fame inductee and close friend to Wendy, what would you care to share with us?
Yeah, thanks again for showing that video, that Nancy, because I thought it's a nice overview of the timeline that Wendy has put together. Perk and I, yeah, we met at the Burloak Canoe Club back in the mid-90s, and she was a kayaker, and I picked up a single blade, and yet we still found ways in common ground to, you know, support each other and flourish in our paddling. At very different stages in our life and things like that, but little did I know back then, but would become one of my biggest fans and my biggest advocates for you can do this, right? In this instance, I'm talking about when I started asking women the question, why not women, in 1998. And then I found myself in a situation where I didn't know what the path was or where it was and that sort of thing. And it's like, she allowed me to trust in my gut instincts and follow my heart and follow my own passion. And then the path would reveal itself. And that's basically, the story of how, Wendy has been there for me over the decades. And as, Grace was just talking about, that it really is a village. When there is any success or any building that happens, it's not just that one person, but it is all the other people that we find support in along the way. Wendy is an incredible visionary, as you can see by Nancy's little video there. And my first introduction to outrigger, I was still paddling sprint sort of at the time, but mostly promoting, was in 2003. And Wendy Perkins, was turning 50 at the time. And her big Hawaii 5-0. So her and Nancy and a bunch of other people had planned to go and do Molokai, which, I didn't know because I was, focused on sprint and that sort of thing. And as it worked out, they had somebody on their team had to drop out last minute. And I was doing a bunch of other things, but I could make this work. And so I had the good fortune of joining the team. And actually, I think that was the best outrigger paddling I ever did at the time, because the more I knew about change races, you'd get in your head. And I don't think I ever changed as quickly as I did back in 2003. I can remember people like Jane Hall laughing at me as I try to come up and then I fall back down. That was in the later years. But anyway, so, so from there in 2003, then I, found myself, Wendy had been to some of these, outrigger, world championships for sprints and stuff like that. And of course I have muscle fibers for distance, but I have the head for sprinting. So it's not a good match. So she got me to go to, I think it was Hilo at the time in 2005. And that's where I really got the bug for outrigger and realized that outrigger is a really good stepping stone for developing sprint canoe, because the world had access to outrigger and ba'a, but not necessarily sprint canoe. Anyway, so between outrigger and dragon boat, that sort of happened. But Wendy's vision, and you can see it in the club, it really explodes. And her ability is not only for her to sort of dream the impossible dream, but she can make it happen. I mean, again, it's all to do with connections and access, and it's relationships. We talk about friendship through the water, and that's what outrigger is all about. And Wendy has made so many connections, before paddling and through paddling. And it's those connections that you can reach out to in order to help you, whether it's Wendy is a master at writing grants and continues to have a vision. And then it's like, okay, we'll get a grant for that and we'll get this. But the grant, when you get a grant, it sounds like it's free money. It's not free money. It is hours of writing. Many of you guys who run clubs, you know that because you write grants, but then it's all the follow-up. It's one thing to lead, but it's another to get people to follow you when you lead. Wendy is a leader who can inspire others to come to the table and help her out. Most currently right now, she's got a magic team, right? There's Wendy at the helm, but then she's been able to inspire a couple of other relatively new paddlers and allow them to bring their talent, behind the scenes running the club, that allows the club to flourish to the next level again. So it's an incredible visionary that can see the big puzzle and then break it down into smaller pieces and then find the right people to get into those pieces so that they can, feel empowered and follow their own ideas and plans for that particular avenue within the club. So I would say, Wendy, thank you. Thank you for being a friend to me. Thank you for all that you've done to the club. As Nancy has said, all that you continue to do again, most recently, you know, when you talk about Grace's, you know, sort of instructors or leaders or, you know, counselors being what used to be campers, Wendy is very proud of the fact that she has now got that in place as well. We have a very strong kids camp. And I mean, COVID was challenging. Well, Wendy found ways for, you know, the blue mind science of, you know, the Great Blue Sea or the Great Lakes or any body of water to flourish. And our kids camps was one of the few things that was running during that time because it was outside. And, you know, stand-up paddle boarding and the things, there's actual risk and there's perceived risk. And Wendy is pretty comfortable with perceived risk, but she also has in the background some things so that even though it may be risky, because any activities on the water are risky, but some of the things that she allows the kids to do in their kids camp, I know for a fact it would scare the crap out of other people, but it's what makes the camp. And it's like, and it allows kids to be kids. And we all talk about having fun, working hard, and inspiring them to the next level. So the kids are the future. So for Hugh, I remember you when I first got in, you know, in that Hilo one, you had groups of the under 19s, the under 23s, the under 16s, right? Grace, it sounds like you're all kids programming. You know, I mean, Wendy's all about the kids programming here, as well as the kapunas. So what's cool at Wainui is we bookend it. We've got the youth. So that sort of, I don't know, it's like 9 to 14, our camp, you know, for the kids. And then we've got that, you know, sort of anything 50 and over. Now I know I'm 50 and over and you can call me a kapuna if you want, but you know, there's the kamputas and Wendy validates their dreams as well. So some of them just want rec, but some of them want more. And so we've mentioned Kona a couple times here already in this short conversation. Our club after COVID, we want to bring it back together, bring back that community and the big boat paddling. And Kona is a great place to do that. There's so much more I could say, but I'm also looking at the time. And I know that we have other people to get to. But Wendy, thank you so much for everything you do for bringing community first, right, to Oakville. The Oakville waterfront has never looked so good as when you continued to move and forward from Burloak into Wainui and continue to advocate and expand for the people of the water. So thank you for all that you do.
Thank you, Sheila. So Valerie Simmons, it was you who brought all of Wendy's achievements to our forefront. You were the one who collected all that history on Eastern Canada outrigger, and Wendy was such a central piece in that. So Val, take the mic. And
sure. Hi, pleasure to be here with all you guys tonight, and so interesting to hear all about you people because I'm relatively new to the sport. And I can't take all the credit for collecting all that information, but I did collect some of it. So both Nancy and Sheila spoke about Wendy's generosity and vision and how that served the Wainui community, but I want to talk about how it's extended into the whole Eastern paddling community. So outrigger canoe in the East, I would say, although it's been around for a very long time, the growth of the sport in the East has been an unbelievably slow burn. It didn't really start expanding beyond a couple of clubs, Wainui being the largest by far, until the last 5 years. And if you're not aware, it is absolutely blowing up in the East right now. And I think the Toronto International race was indication of that with how many, I think it was a record-breaking number of clubs that were in that race this year. And when I talk to some of the other, well, currently it's gentlemen, not sure, that's not true, women as well, who are trying to get clubs going in the East, it's rare that somebody does not bring up Wendy's name, and at one point how she's helped clubs, particularly mine, but not exclusively mine, that's for sure. Wendy has this attitude of, and I think this comes from being such a visionary, I've never heard her say no. I'm going to give you some small examples. They probably don't sound like a lot in the West because you have so many more canoes and so many more clubs. But in Montreal in particular, it's really hard to find really good steers people during an era where there was only 2 OC6s in all of Montreal, and not very many people had access to them. So I remember calling up Wendy, she didn't even know who I was, and saying, I want to race in your race. I've got a crew, but we don't have a steer person. And she said, oh, well, we happen to have a guest in from Hawaii. He could steer for you. And then not long after that, I said, hey, we've got a steer person, but she doesn't have much experience. Do you have anybody that can give our steer person some tips the day before the race, and we'll go out and try a practice? And she goes, oh, well, we've got somebody in from Hawaii that can help you. So that's the second guy from Hawaii that visited her club that she shared with me. But sadly, when Jason Momoa visited her club because he was in Toronto filming, I didn't have any needs at that point. I mean, it may have been during COVID, I'm not sure, but I'm like, of all the Hawaiians, you give me those 2 guys and I don't get Jason Momoa. Anyways, Wendy is definitely a force to be reckoned with. And the reason that I'm the one that coined anti-Wendy is because she has given advice to so many clubs in Eastern Canada and helped out so many people. When Moni was getting the Eastern Waterway Series going, Wendy is sort of that voice of reason in the background, but she's not like, the voice of reason that is worried somebody's going to get hurt. She's the voice of reason of, if you want to do this, this is how you're going to get there. My club is not the only Eastern club that she was instrumental in getting an outrigger canoe to us. It's unless you're going to buy a $35,000 unlimited canoe, it's very hard to find used spec boats, and used spec boats are what starts clubs, and that's what's been needed in the East to start some of these clubs. And Wendy was instrumental in getting my club a boat, as well as another Toronto club. So I can't say that she's coached me. I've raced against her, but I haven't raced with her. But I want to race with you, Wendy, just in case you're got an empty seat at some point. But she's been a major mentor for me and so many people in the East outside of the Wainui Club. So I just wanted to make sure that the idea of unsung hero is sort of how we think of Wendy, but in a way she's not an unsung hero because her name comes up constantly every time anybody in the East has a question of how do we make something happen for a race? How do we make something happen for a club? She's been our go-to person. And for me, Wendy, that's been unbelievably valuable, and I appreciate it very much. Mahalo.
So sweet.
Thank you, Val. Wendy, you have the stage. Looks like you're muted.
Oh, they muted you. I have a little background audience here celebrating. Wow, I'm honored. I'm honored to be honored with the likes of you. An evening of celebration of really the heroes I've had in this sport is extraordinary. And when I look across this screen, I don't know all of you, but those I know, I mean, starting with Andrea tonight and Sheila and Nancy and her wonderful tribute, and Val. Val, that was beautiful. Sheila, that was beautiful. I've always been fortunate. When I picked up a paddle, Sheila happened to be at the club. And I gravitate to people who know what they're doing and do it well. And I've been very fortunate to be mentored by people like that. It has made an extreme difference in my life to be surrounded by people that you admire, people who go out and get things done, is inspiring to me. And my paddling life, those many of you know, was my second start in life, my second life, post-divorce. And it's been a good one. And I have had the joy and the pleasure of sharing that with lots of people over many years. And I think that's that enthusiasm, that giving back, is what's being recognized tonight. If there's something I would love to have a tribute, when I pass, it's that I carried this torch that was given to me by the likes of you, and I passed it on, and to other generations. So it is a pleasure to me it's a pleasure to me to be in a boat, with people who can put aside everything else, put a paddle in the water, have fun, and feel alive. And that's what the sport does for me. And that's why I keep going at it, because it is such a beautiful part of my life. It's not just standing on the shoulders of people like you. It's paddling, connecting with the water, connecting with the world, and being ever present. I used to say when I first took up paddling that you can't obsess and stay in the boat, and you have to give one of those things up. It is a moving meditation for me, but it's also an obsession now to pass that joy on to others. So I'm really proud, as Sheila said, I'm proud of the fact that our adult program still has good legs. I know we need to regather after COVID and pull people back to the fold, and it'll happen. But this year, for the first time, both our children's programs and our Kapuna programs brought in more revenue than our adult programs, which to me means that our club has legs beyond mine, beyond ours. And I'm really excited for that as well. Thank you all. Thank you. What an honor.
Thank you, Wendy. So Eric, we've gone Vancouver to Burnaby to Oakville. Let's go to the Okanagan. Don Mulhall. Yep. Hey Leanne, can you cue up that first video for Don? I think this will be very touching for him. I hope he has a box of tissues. It was touching for me when I heard this. But just a quick overview. Don's been out there in Penticton for 20 plus years. What I heard from Penny and everybody else who emailed me consistently the past few days from Penticton was continuity. Don has been there, outrigger, driving boat. He is I don't know what people would do if they didn't expect Don to show up every single day. So Leanne, can you find that video? There's like
Ooey.
Oh no.
I spend a lot of time just hanging out. Please allow me to introduce myself. If you are a BC Okanagan local, chances are we have likely crossed paths. Everyone knows me as Jack. Don and I have known each other for a long time. Don is a very special person, and we have a bond that words cannot convey. I've been a resident along East Side Road, not far from Skaha Lake Beach for many years, since I was a young buoy. I spend a lot of time just hanging out on Skaha Lake. I do get quite a lot of visitors during spring, summer, autumn. It's usually paddlers swinging by and waving as they come and go from the Penticton Racing Canoe Club boathouse. Winter can be very lonely. The winter of 2017-2018 was particularly traumatic. I got caught up in the winter ice on Skaha Lake and carried along far from my longtime home when the ice started to break up and drift. Don found me lost and alone, came to my rescue, and helped me to find my way back home. Don tracked down the people who had given me a place to call home from a young age and returned me to familiar waters. I see Don often and only hope that Lana does not feel threatened by our closeness. You're the best. Jack, good night.
Well, a testimonial from somebody who's known Don as long as Lake. We have a couple guests. Sheila, Brad, do the two of you care to share what we spoke this morning about, which was very thoughtful of you? Brad, Penny, are you there?
Brad, did you want to go first? Oh, okay, I'm on, I guess. Brad's is muted himself. So yeah, I spoke with Graham this morning. I love that little video of Jack. I was actually going to try and send that to Graham this afternoon, and so happy to see somebody else already sent it to him. I didn't have the commentary behind it. I just had the video. So I've been involved in paddling for a very short time compared to many of the speakers today. I didn't start until about 2010 in dragon boating, and that's where I was introduced to Don as eventually as my dragon boat coach. And then he recruited some of us dragon boaters to join Outrigger in about 2016, 2017. So I'm pretty new in this sport compared to everybody that's spoken today. My impression of Don when I became involved in paddling was he was the paddling guru supreme in Penticton. He's truly the face of paddling in Penticton. If you mention to anyone that you paddle in the South Okanagan, whether it's dragon boating or outrigger, they say, oh, you know Don Mulhall then. So they just automatically assume you're paddling, you know Don. He's introduced so many people to the sport of paddling in Penticton. Right now, I would say about half of our outrigger club has been recruited from dragon boating by Don. I just have a few fun facts about racing with Don. I've gone to a few races down at the Gorge, at Hood River and Bellingham and Tacoma and down in Harrison and at Lotus. And it's always fun racing with him. He truly has inspired many of us to take up the sport and makes it a really fun time. But a couple fun facts. So when you're racing with Don, you always have to know when he's going to eat his peanut butter and jam sandwich. Then you know how soon the race is coming. It's a tradition with him. And if you want to race with him again, you make sure you bring some Ruffles potato chips for after the race and a beer if you're really smart. And make sure you tell him his hair looks nice. And never have a water bottle or a baler or anything rolling around in the OC6, or it'll go swimming if Don gets a hold of it. And this is just a rumor. I don't know if it's true, but I think he likes to listen to Barry Manilow before he races to calm his nerves. And also I've known him to start races in the wrong direction. At one of the CORA Cup small boat races in Harrison, he was getting impatient and the race was taking a long time to get going. He ended up heading the wrong way when they blew the horn. But he still came in first in the category in the OC2 with, oh, that was, I can't remember her name right now. Terrible. And one thing I learned from Don really quick, and this is, he says it all the time. If there's two boats in the water, it's a race. Those are just a few comments. I have my experience with Don, and I know there wouldn't be dragon boating, there wouldn't be outrigger in Penticton if it wasn't for Don. And he makes it fun to show up there every time. And I really thank him for all his work at the club and in the sport in BC. Thank you, Don.
Thanks, Penny. I was having troubles unmuting. My background is actually in triathlon, and because of Don, I got involved with paddling. That was around 2005. And there are three words I think of for Don: dedication, passion, and then there's the third word, which relates to the human side of him. He's got this nervousness about him, which is really nice to know coming from a coach, him being the coach and me being the student. So he's been my coach for paddling for years and continues to be. But in terms of dedication, when the club was growing in 04, 05, 06, he realized, along with a few others, that the club was growing enough that we could actually put a men's crew into the race going into Vernon. But it meant we had to train together, and that wasn't such an easy task. So Don had said he was willing to do anything for us, whatever time we needed to meet, that we could all get together and practice, because we needed to practice together. And we had a few chats, we went over things, and we all agreed, okay, the only time we could meet was at 6 a.m. And there were 2 days a week that we could meet 6 a.m. until we got to the weekend. And Don kind of frowned and said, you guys are really, I'm pretty sure he said this, you're affecting my beauty sleep. And you have to know his humorous side to really believe that he's worried about his beauty sleep. I mean, just look at him sitting in Maui right now. But he did make it work. He accepted getting up earlier than 6, so that we would all be paddling those days at 6 a.m. And we did get a men's crew into Vernon. And he continues to do that. Time and again, year after year, he's been the man behind paddling for dragon boating and for outrigger in Penticton. He's always talked about his days at Falls Creek, and he's tried to emulate that to get growth to continue in our little town. And we really are little compared to so many of the other towns that we're all from in our paddling world. But the coolest part was when in 06, he went to Molokai, he got a bunch of us interested in it. And we continued on to try and work towards getting a few of us to go there. But let me go on. I'm so glad that Don is actually getting this award, because not only do I think of him as a builder, but as a sustainer and a maintainer of paddling in Penticton. We have, for those of you who've been here and competed in the duel in the desert, you've seen our boathouse. It's a great, grand old building, but it's actually decrepit. And Don's a major driver in communicating with the city as to how we can move forward to get it reconstructed and have it so useful in the future once it gets built, because it's on a fantastic location. It's just, we don't have far to carry our boats to get into the water. And that's all what I think of as the dedication of Don. In terms of passion, because of his involvement with the dragon boating, I've seen pictures of him. I haven't seen him in person, but I think Penny has. He's been known to wear pink in support of the survivorship team. And to me, it's rather gutsy. I think he goes beyond Elton John, because he's gone into this thing of cross-dressing. Penny has even said that she's seen a picture of him in a pink tutu. And I don't know if people believe it, but apparently someone's trying to get a picture to Graham to show that Don has worn a pink tutu in public. But another thing Don is wonderful at is showing his human side. So when I talk about that human side and nervousness, he's gotten me to paddle at 6 in the morning, in 6s, in 1s. And then a number of times we've actually paddled together in OC2s to race in an event called paddling to start a race that ends up at the top of Apex Mountain in March of our years. And that is no longer present, but it was a challenge to be paddling in Penticton in March when the waters are rather chilly. And in those races, he liked to try and be in the front, but I said to him, because I'm 5'8", he's 6'4", and I said, if you sit in the front, I can't see over you. I can't see much around you. So I think I have to sit in the front. And he laughed, but that's how we would paddle when we're paddling together. And this nervousness he has, Penny's talked about, he's very set in his ways on how he has to do things. He's got to have that peanut butter and jelly sandwich. He's got to have everything set right. When the race begins, or prior to the race beginning, we're all thinking, okay, we're all getting ready. We're all trying to calm down. But the question always comes up, where's Don? And usually he's in the washroom. He's so bloody nervous. He has to check to make sure he clears himself before the race starts. And at first, when they told me this, I thought, oh yeah, that's just a one-time thing. Well, I've learned over years, it's not just a one-time thing. And it's not just in the OC6, it's in every boat. But the biggest thing was when we were paddling in 07 for this Molokai race, our support boat was a 50-foot sailboat. And when we were on the support boat, because it was a rather wavy year, a couple times I'd go down to the galley to grab my snacks and my spare food. And then when I came back to the deck, Don would look at me like, did you just go downstairs? And I would say, yeah, why? He would say, can you go down there and get my stuff? And I looked at him like, are you that lazy? And he says, well, no, I'm afraid of getting seasick and I don't want to go down there. So I'd go down there and grab his stuff and bring it back up. And then just to make him feel good, I think the rest of the guys who were on the deck said, hey, you seem to feel okay going down to the galley to get food. Can you go get mine? And then Don had this huge smirk. But the biggest thing about nervousness and Don having things just his way, the night before we started our Molokai race, our captain, like we were on a joint team, it was half Hawaiians and half Canadians. So it was me and I, or Don and I, pardon me, from Penticton, and Ross and Steph from Jericho. But the lead person was supposed to bring food for dinner the night before, and the plane from Honolulu got canceled. So there was a delay for about, I don't know, 2.5 hours. And we knew that we needed to eat because we had to get up at 3:30 in the morning to get down to the beach to get ready for the race start. And as time got towards 7 and then 7:30, Don's face was getting crazier and crazier. And I could see the blood rushing around in his head. And I realized this guy is starting to get unsettled. And my background is actually in triathlon racing for Ironman. And we always know something can go wrong. And if something goes wrong, you've got to prepare to deal with it mentally. So I told Don, look, I know you're used to having food and you need to have it digested before we go to sleep, before we get up, but just calm down, because the more you unnerve yourself, the worse it's going to get. And sure enough, we all got together. There was some hotel nearby and we all headed off down there to get dinner, albeit a late dinner at 8 o'clock. But that was the craziest I'd ever seen him. And at least by the next morning, everything had turned around and he was just prepped for this race. The final thing that I think about in terms of both dedication and passion for Don, some of you may have seen his New Year's Day paddle. A number of years ago, he decided to do a videotape of going paddling in the snow or while snowing in Penticton. So a bunch of you earlier were talking about what's the weather like. You've got these windstorms down in Vancouver. We, as Penny told Graham earlier, she and I had snow 2 nights ago and last night. And Don sitting in Maui with perfect timing to avoid snow and having to shovel snow. Well, this one particular year, he wanted to let everyone know that he is familiar with in the paddling world, that snow is not going to stop him from paddling. And if you have to think about it, just imagine he had to open up the boathouse, stick the camera in there, open up the door so that the camera would catch him opening the door. It would show him shoveling the snow to get out of the beach house. It would show him carrying his boat through the snowy beach onto the water. And the best part was he had a song in the background of the rebellious side of Don. Oh, and if you didn't know he had a rebellious side, you'll have to have a beer with him and chat with him. But that's some of my times with Don. And I'm, as I said earlier, very glad that he's a recipient of this award, because he really deserves it for continuing to build paddling in the Penticton area. Thanks.
Thank you, Brad. And we're going to hand it over to Don here in just a moment. But Don, I hope you appreciate that there were quite a few people in Penticton who wanted to step up and speak on your behalf. And I have raced with you, Don Mulhall, quite a few times, and I know exactly what they're talking about. You are methodical in your organization. So, Don, take the mic and give us a few words from not too thoroughly soused by now with the Mai Tais.
I haven't started. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, hear you fine.
Good, excellent. I had a speech planned actually because I didn't figure anybody would have anything good to say about me, including my wife, it appears. My wife and son have gone off in search of happy hours, I believe. I'm so honored. I'm looking at the list of who have been nominated for this. And I am truly humbled. I so appreciate that the CORA board is recognizing me. I think I did have a little speech, and I'm going to go through it if I could. They say necessity is the mother of invention. And I think that that's why I've received this award, and I'll explain. Boating in '93 in False Creek with a corporate team. I found that I loved the sport because it didn't involve having to kick or throw or catch a ball, none of which I could do. I think we're all kind of paddlers, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, but we're all paddlers because how can you not love a sport where you just got to show up and work really hard and be in sync and work with everybody, but it's just about how hard you work. I started, so I said Falls Creek, dragon boating, then I took I think it was the first ever novice outrigger program put on by Falls Creek. It was Daphne Brockington and the Inas, we called them, a bunch of women whose last name ended in Ina that coached us the first time. I'm talking old school, like Ron Downs and Ross Priesty went through that very first program, and a bunch of us kind of moved on and into the sport. I paddled with Falls Creek men's. Now the necessity part came when my wife forced me kind of against my will to move to the Okanagan. And for those across Canada, the Okanagan is a sort of a deserty area within British Columbia, but I'd grown up at the coast and I didn't want to move to this horrible, cold, brown, dry space. And the worst part was that there was no paddling. So that was the biggest part of it. I found out, and some of us on this call are going to remember a guy by the name of Brent Bagnall. And Brent Bagnall had the Burrard, which a number of us are familiar with. The Burrard was the original plug that they made boats from, but then they fiberglassed over that plug. So it was a 850-pound OC6 that we began a club. I think there was a big migration back in that time around the 90s, I guess. A bunch of us moved away from Vancouver. We had Vernon starting up as a club. The Kelowna was about to start up with a club. And we were starting a club with this 850-pound boat that we would roll down the beach on logs. It's the only way we could get it to the beach because we couldn't carry it. It was kind of fragile and would come apart. And it also weighed 850 pounds. But yeah, Brent Bagnall had this OC6. We found it and we started our club. We paddled on Okanagan for a season or two. And then I discovered an old abandoned house or boathouse on Skaha Lake. So Penticton, where I live, is surrounded by lakes. The Okanagan has a 110-kilometer lake on which there are 3 dragon or outrigger clubs. I guess the necessity came in as much as I wanted to have races in the Okanagan. And nobody else was doing it. I was never much of an organizer, but I started organizing events because we could have races. We started Duel in the Desert in '98. We started Length of the Lake, which was a few years later. That was Brent Bagnall and Risa Greenwood's idea. Length of the Lake, for those that don't know, is a 100-kilometer paddle, from Vernon at the top of Okanagan Lake all the way down to Penticton at the bottom of the lake. And it has 5 beach changes. It's not a change race per se, but it's a beach change race. We ran a small boat series that we just kind of held for Okanagan paddlers because all of you Vancouver paddlers and Calgary paddlers were coming and you were too fast for us and it was making us feel bad. So we purposely held a race series trying to get more local Okanagan paddlers paddling without the fear of getting our asses whooped by much faster paddlers from the lower mainland. We brought dragon boating into Skaha Boathouse around '99 with a breast cancer team that I've coached ever since 1999, quite proudly. We also gained about 7 or 8 teams for dragon boat, and that's kind of, we're hoping to see that sport go back and forth between the two. So as I say, it was kind of the necessity of, I moved to this place that didn't have a lot of paddling, and I in order to paddle and race, I figured I needed to organize the race. And I get to do that more or less for my job now. I organize dragon boat races around the province of BC and help put on clinics and stuff for either paddling or places like paddling in Maui as well. Anyway, once again, I am truly, when I look at the list of people that I have been nominated next to, I recognize I'm the little fish here. And I'm very humbled and appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.
Love the background, Don. I got to get that screensaver.
Yeah, it's an expensive screensaver.
I'll bet it is. All right. So we're going over to Vancouver Island, although apparently Rosemary Henry has relocated to Pemberton. So she's probably neighbors with the Hugh Fisher. Rosemary, is your husband out from underneath the house yet?
Yes, he is out from underneath the house.
And what about your sons? Have they?
And that's a son.
We have a son here too. This is a son here. I'm calling in from the oh, you won't see it because of the blurred background, but this is the baggage claim area of the Vancouver airport.
Oh, well done.
All right, so
and I'm Brian.
Start with
Henry.
Brian Henry. We'll go with seniority in the family first. If you don't know Brian Henry, please, Brian, introduce yourselves and give us a talk.
Well, I am I'm the fellow that put up with Rosie for a very long time.
Still do.
A lot of people call her Rosemary. Most do. She's Rosie to us. It all started because Rosie is competitive, and unlike most people, much more competitive than anybody I think I know. She decided that she was a paddler. We were all paddlers. We were more kayakers than we were canoeists. But she decided that she got together with a group and they paddled out of Victoria canoe club, canoe and kayak club. But they were very recreational, and it didn't give her the kind of training and growth that she really wanted. So I owned Ocean River Sports and we did a lot of kayak things. So I said, well, why don't we get together and we'll get some outrigger canoes. So we got a couple of advantages from Western Canoeing, and Rosie started Ocean River Paddling Club. And it was the first paddling club on Vancouver Island. Oh, in Victoria. Oh, I guess Comox was there because of Annie and yep. So it started to grow, and she was the one that really spearheaded outrigger canoeing in Victoria and Lower Vancouver Island, starting doing the bridges races, island iron races. She's prompting me on my side here. And, you know, it was her leadership that really brought a whole bunch of people together. Our club grew and grew. And out of the club that there became more clubs. So right now, Victoria is a really neat little hub of outrigger canoeing. Rosie was, remember when she was in Bora Bora, she was, I think she won a bronze medal. She was the only North American to win a medal. And she phoned me on my 50th birthday. I was outrigger racing in Victoria in a snowstorm. So we talked to her and Andrea on the phone at that time, which was really fun. You know, Rosie's driven. She she motivated so many people in Victoria. We hauled boats over to Gibson's, to the Nationals. I guess I can't say we. I drove safety boats and raced in our Island Iron so many years. And it was all the organization that Rosie was part of. She went to Calgary, and in Calgary, she was an official. And I know that she stood her ground on so many points, trying to stick up for the average person. Some of the seniors, and making sure that they got treated the right way. It's not just about being competitive, it's about being fair. And I'm really proud of Rose. And I think Graham, our two sons, they did some outrigger paddling. They both joined Ocean River Youth Paddling Club. which has worked out into Victoria Youth Paddling Club. It still exists, but those guys learned how to paddle K1 and surf ski and also outriggers. And they raced, and I'll let Graham tell that story. So
sure.
Thank you very much. Proud to be married to Rose. And take on new challenges as we move. Hey, Graham, good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too, Dad. I've been in Europe for a couple weeks, and my flight landed about half an hour ago. So I snuck through security while some other folks were talking, and now I'm here and happy to be here to speak about my mom and say how proud I am of her and all of her accomplishments, and also though what she's done for the paddling community. It's a bit of a weird position because most of the outrigger canoeing she did was when I was probably between the ages of like 8 and 14. And when you're between the ages of 8 and 14, you are shepherded around to various races and events. You don't really know what's going on. And sometimes you just grumble about being there. But I think in hindsight, it was wonderful to be a part of it all, however tangentially. I think, I guess not entirely tangentially, as my dad alluded to, like we did get involved in racing, and I don't know how old I was when they let me steer an outrigger. Oh, sorry, that's there's a problem with the flight from London. There's a lot of people right over there.
We can hear you, Graham.
Okay, sorry, it's very loud in my ears, so I thought it would be loud in yours. I will continue. And I think I was about 12 years old, maybe 13, when they let me steer an OC6 in the Bridges race for the first time, which was both a terrifying experience, but also an emboldening one, because years later, my brother and I convinced 4 friends to race an outrigger canoe from Washington State to Alaska in the first ever race to Alaska. And I don't think without that prior experience as 12-year-olds racing an outrigger, we would have felt comfortable saying, oh yeah, we'll race a canoe for 11 days nonstop and sleep in the boat. And yeah, we'll be fine to steer it. It'll be fine. But I think some of that attitude also came from my mom. And I think the number one thing I wanted to say today was, I think my mom's biggest inspiration for me, and I think a lot of the people around her, is that she's very willing to just dive into anything, take on a new challenge, and make it work. I think the attitude of taking up new hobbies, taking up new challenges, and doing that kind of iteratively throughout your life, whether it be taking up outrigger canoeing or transitioning into sprint racing for outrigger canoeing, or transitioning away from outrigger into a new challenge. I think being able to take up new hobbies, new challenges, and new sports is something that I've learned a lot from my mom, and how important that is to keep you engaged and excited about the next challenge to come. The other, I think, takeaway or little anecdote I wanted to give was the sort of mental readjustment that had to happen when my mom and dad sometimes raced in the same boat together, because when they raced on the same team, that's when it became very clear that my mom was the boss. Yeah, it was like we'd see them, we'd be like, oh, mom and dad are racing together, and they'd go off and they'd get in the boat, and then we'd see them paddle around to the start line, and my dad would be like in seat, I don't know, 4 or 5, and then my mom would be steering, yelling at them all. And it was like, okay, I see what's going on here.
Oh, we lost your voice.
Am I back?
Yeah,
you're back.
I just want to say I'm very proud of my mom for both her accomplishments racing, but also the community she built, and and that the work she did, and what she taught carries on today in both me, and I can certainly speak for my brother, who is currently kayak guiding in Antarctica, and that's why he couldn't be here. So, yeah, thank you all.
I want to say that
so Graham,
I did paddle in the same boat as Rosemary very often.
Yeah, get it.
I have my own team.
Okay. Can I talk now?
Rosemary.
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
on.
Thank you for, oh, can you guys hear me okay?
Rosemary.
Yeah. What's going on?
I'm calling a timeout on you.
Uh-oh, we're gonna time out on me.
So
really fast?
no, it's real. I just wanted to say to Graham that that's not unusual, that you're someplace that's not conducive, because last year we had Sheila Kuyper parked outside of Starbucks at midnight, piggybacking off their Wi-Fi on her way back on a road trip across the country. And so we have had some people drop in from attend these sessions, and that's great. And I did want to have Annie Boulding come on and have a little, because Rosemary, I would not have known anything about you if it had not been for Annie Boulding telling us about the Burrard, where she drove down to Victoria to pick it up and you were there. And believe me or not, these things happen because people say something. They just make mention of something. And so Annie Boulding, please, before we give the mic to Rosemary,
Okay.
give us.
I better talk really fast because we're running out of time, right? I just want to say that it was, can you hear me? Can people hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Rosemary, I'll talk to you. I just want to
Fine.
say I thought it was amazing how much work you did down in Victoria, because you had so many things on the go. You were a wife, a mom, a business owner. You had a women's program going. You were doing learn to paddle things, and you had so many wonderful races organized. You know, shortly after you got your foot in the door and got things going down there, you got the bridges going. I've always loved the Island Iron. You created such a wonderful legacy there with that course being such a fabulous course with the, getting such a variety of conditions and such a beautiful scenic race and the water being so wonderful there. But I just, as far as the connection to Strathcona Park Lodge, I want to just tell people that years ago, Rosie was such a lot of fun running the Whitewater River Swift. We'd get in after work, we'd all jump into the truck and we had boats on and we'd drive out to the river and we had just a great time paddling on the Whitewater. And so she really has been paddling for over 40 years. And it was such a treat when Russell and Graham visited the lodge and did some work up at Strathcona. My brother was so impressed having them there, and they just did such a great job being such watermen and having such amazing experience under their belts that led them to those expeditions. I think I was up there once right before they were training for they were getting ready to go up to Alaska. So you really inspired your kids, and you were such an ambassador and an organizer and developer of the sport. And you did it all on top of being incredibly busy. And Brian was such an amazing supporter. By far your best boyfriend and husband.
Thanks, Annie.
And we just really appreciated coming down from Comox and being treated so well and welcomed. And we always got deals at your store and for our equipment. And we really, you did amazing things for the sport, and as well as your personal recognition, which we talked about a bit, for some of your fabulous results. And I think we left out the World Masters Games where you got a gold and a silver, and that you shared all your photographs that you had over the years, which really helped Graham. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for everything you did to develop our sport here on the island and to have it grow, and just bringing the people together and the connections. Earlier, Sheila was talking about connections. You just really connected with so many people, and you were really able to ignite things at an important time. And it was so great. You got the kids going too. And I'd like to see a lot more of that in the future out here on the West Coast. We don't have enough of it. And it was really nice when you got your sons at a junior crew going.
Thanks,
So
Annie.
I know we're probably almost out of time, so I should probably shut up now. Thank you, Rosemary.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thank
We're
you.
doing overtime.
We're doing overtime?
Oh, I just wanted to let Rosemary talk because she hasn't had a chance to speak. Graham?
We have
plenty of time. So thank you, everybody, for kind words. My family and Annie, that's wonderful. Annie, I always admired your skill and your talent on the water, so I am bowed down to you. And the same with several of the inductees tonight. Andrea was someone who got me going with the sprints. She invited me to join the False Creek team, and I went, what? Okay. So I went, and as they were doing their training, I was lifting just weights in the living room, watching the news at night. And but I went and I had a fabulous time, and I fell in love with sprints, and I realized that's my personality. I like to get it quick, done, get it over with. I did some distance racing and fell into the steering mode, which I did love, but I think I'm a little bit too hyper to stick with one thing too long. So I put my heart and soul into paddling for quite a while, and now I've been away from it for probably 10 years, but this award came out of the blue, and I am very humbled and very touched. Thank you.
Chris Clappin. Thank you, Rosemary, for everything you did, sending us all the photos, sending us the stories, just filling so many blanks in history. Leanne, are you driving?
Yeah, that's me now.
Then we have another slide, and then you're going to be doing double duty. You're going to be moderator, and you're going to be guest speaker for our final inductee of the evening, Kamini Jane. That slide, that was next to impossible to get Kamini's greatest hits on one slide, let alone her bio in 2 pages. And Leanne had an opportunity a few weeks ago at Jericho Sailing Center for the Samoa Time Trials to do an in-person presentation to Kamini. So she's had practice. So Leanne, we're giving you the floor here to tell us a few words about Kamini, some personal stories, and then we're going to hand it over to Kamini and we'll wrap up. Take it away.
Looking at the people on this call, I'm seeing like Andrea and Susan and Hugh and Sheila that have been with COM since the very beginning, much longer than I have. And I had a chance to say my spiel a couple of weeks ago with COM, and I'm glad those that were there, they saw me get, a little close to tears. So I know there's some other people that have been emotional already tonight. So I know that if I get back there tonight, I'm not the first one. But I'm going to say a couple things, but I'd love to open it to Andrea, Susan, Hugh, Sheila, anyone else, because there's lots of stories for Kamini. I've already said what she and I can talk forever, and we will talk forever. But Kamini has been an inspiration for me. I first got to meet Kamini in 2008 when I first got my first foray into the IVF CORA sprint world. And Sheila was along for this ride with me, taking me along from the east into meeting this west. And I remember flying out with Sheila to train with the team from the west. The 2 of us were the 2 Eastern girls going out to train with the 4 from Vancouver for the sprints in Sacramento and to get ready for it. And I was the new kid on the block. And so getting to introduce to everybody, and I was just ultimately, I was there to soak up as much knowledge from everybody as I could. And that was now 14 years ago. And I remember every time being in the boat with Cheryl and Sheila and Kamini and all the other great people that we've paddled with over the years, with Helen and Kimberly and Erica and Shannon and Zoe and all these other phenomenal paddlers. And I just like, how do these ladies feel all this stuff that's going on when they can't see what's going on behind them? And like, how do they feel what's going on in the boat? And it's just like I kind of set that goal for myself, going, okay, I want to learn how are they feeling all this when they can't see it, and how are they knowing what's going on, and they just how. And now here I am, you know, a decade later, and I'm the one being able to now pass this knowledge on to other people. And it's that connection, that community feel, where because of people like Kamini that have freely shared their knowledge, and everyone else that we're inducting this year and in the past years, because Sheila was an inductee last year, is that they've so freely and generously given their knowledge that now, me being the new kid on the block, you know, 14 years ago, I'm now able to share what I've learned from them and pass it on to even more people. So their legacy continues to grow and move on through others and all those people that they touched. And like, Kamini doesn't know this, but her setting up the Outrigger symposiums back in, you know, a few years ago, where she set up these conferences that were strictly, you know, how do we get better in Outrigger, and bringing in these experts to talk about different facets of training for Outrigger. That was one of the inspirations for the CORA Off the Water series, which this is now a part of, these Zoom series that came out of COVID, was like, how do we get people together talking about Outrigger so that we can share this knowledge amongst all the paddlers, not just in Canada, but get it out there to paddlers of the world, so that together we can get better. How can we grow the sport even more? So she's one of the inspirations behind that. But as an athlete, a coach, a businesswoman, a role model for me personally, and most of all, a friend, there's so many stories. There's so much about Kamini that I admire. But like, I want to hear from Hugh, Andrea, Susan. Like, you folks know her on a day-to-day basis. I've had the privilege of racing, you know, all over the world with Kamini. And I still, it's a privilege to know that we've had many crews together, and I still hope that there's lots of crews that we get to race together in the future. So congratulations, Kamini, this is well deserved. But I would love to open the floor to some of you others that are on here to share some of your anecdotes or stories. So please step in.
So Leanne, before we hand off, I wanted to say that last year when we did this, we got to the tail end, and I think Hugh Fisher used the phrase circling the boats, circling the canoes. And I don't think we're running out of time here. So people should stop worrying about the clock running out, unless of course it's like past midnight and you need to go to sleep. But these are the stories we want to capture, and we've got the recording running. So please, anybody who has something to say, feel free, step up, have a conversation. Let's capture this for posterity. And then eventually we'll let Kamini have a say. Okay? Carry on.
So I got a tiny little story to tell about Kamini. So we used to have a fantastic Canadian woman kayak paddler named Carolyn Brunet. And Carolyn Brunet raced at the Olympic Games. And then on her final race, the weather came up. It was terrible, huge, wavy, awful conditions, and couldn't paddle in that condition very well. She should have won the gold, didn't. Kamini at that time was still racing flat water, and I remembered going down to Falls Creek and thinking, you know what, I'm gonna teach this flat water woman how to paddle in waves. So I hauled Kamini out in flat water boats out into the middle of English Bay, and I don't think she'd ever been an outrigger. Was that Kamini? You'll have to say that, but I think that was her first awakening to this huge world of non-flat water, and what it was really about. This world of, I don't think she was all that comfortable out there. Is that right? Remember that? Anyway, that's my story.
So I'll step in here because I have known Kamini ever since she was probably 18 and I wasn't. And the biggest thing to know about Connie is she is rigorous. She's rigorous about her family. She's rigorous about how she coaches. She's even more rigorous how she trains. And I remember as an athlete, when she was on the national team, there were no real coaches out here, and she chose to spend most of her time coaching, paddling and training out here. She had a couple of coaches, but she was all alone, and she had a goal. She could put it together. She was organized, and that speaks to everything that she has continued to do through her paddling, coaching life. And she's also creating a legacy, as these other Hall of Fames this year and last year have done. Every time I go out with Connie and we co-coach, and initially I was the good guy, she was the bad guy. Well, now it switches, and sometimes I'm actually the bad guy, so we all do progress, and she is becoming the good guy. Don't know how that ever happened. But I think that every time I learn, she never stops. She'll get off the water, and the next day, the next week, the creativity in bringing athletes along to be their best. And she allows every athlete to be their best, but being rigorous, they have to choose, they have to commit, and then they get absolutely her full attention, her creativity, and her ability to get in a boat and be the stroke, whether it's outrigger, marathon, or dragon boat, and set the pace and understand of how to bring the other paddlers behind her to the goal she needs. And I just would like to say, I thank you every day I get to go out with you, and I do learn. I learn so much. And she's got so many more years, as do many on this Hall of Fame, to be able to continue. None of you can give up. Keep going and inspire those others who are coming up behind you to take the reins, help you along. And my goal is that someone, and maybe it's Connie, Leanne, it could be anybody, pushes me out and says, you know, it's time, you can go. Who would like to speak next?
I'm just gonna echo, Andrea, what you've said, and my experience with Connie so far, and my very young paddling career compared to the majority of the recipients and people that are on the call. With Connie, when she sees that an athlete is determined and is willing to put in the work, it's like Andrea says, you get her full attention, you get her dedication and the advice, and just how Connie is able to, like Andrea said, take a crew and develop that crew and have that crew follow her. It's amazing. I'm always asking, Com will test that I'm always asking her advice with my women's crew on, oh my God, I've hit a standstill, help. And Com helps me to break it down. She's, between her and Andrea, my coaching ability would not be where it is today if it wasn't for Connie and Andrea, with their mentoring, their guidance, their encouragement to get me where I am. And with Com's trust, I coach with her with her various clinics, which that just blows my mind that I've gone from the little paddler who could in 2009 to now the paddler coach, putting courses together, and it just blows my mind that, her energy, her dedication to her sport, herself, her athletes, her friends. It's like Andrea, it knows no limits. And again, she's beyond deserving of the award today. And I'm just so honored to have her as my coach, have her as my mentor, and to have her as my friend.
Next. Okay. I'm very happy that I actually get to speak. Because, I first met Tom in the sprint canoe world when I was trying to, figure out how to get women's canoe on the block. And when I ended up, I think it was in Hungary in 1998, when I was first asking women, why not women? And I remember Kamini up in the stands, and Kamini is one of those people who sees the bigger picture, and she sees what's going on. And if you're a teacher, you've got to look at not just, the squeaky wheel or the person always asking the question, but who's off in the corner, who's kind of not feeling that sense of belonging. Kamini, on to the best of my knowledge, of course, I was not on the inner circle, but what I would see from the outside, Kamini would make people feel at home, and especially those newcomers to Team Canada, and traveling at all of those international events. So that was my first sort of interaction with her. Another one that I remember was Kamini actually came east, and shortly after I started to want to figure out outrigger, and I wasn't doing such a good job, but Kam and I were out just outside Oakville Harbor, and there was a nice little eastern swell, and I wasn't doing it right. But it was hilarious because, again, like so much of paddling is all about feel, and you can't muscle it, and you can't go bat out of hell and then nothing. Like you got it. So it, if it wasn't for Kamini, having the patience to, sort of like help me figure that out, right? I probably wouldn't love to surf. And I mean, at this point, I don't know, maybe it'll change again, but I don't need to race, but I love to go out and catch the bumps, right? And I often think about that time when Kam and I were out there. And I also think somebody, this is just tangent, Ryan Pogue, I remember he took me out in the early years, and like, I just like was so stiff and rigid, and you just got to be loose and let it go, right? And Kamini and him would both say, like, a boat is not going to tip over, right? You just have to let it flow underneath and keep nice loose hips. So anyway, we're in an interesting sport, and there's many of them: running, triathlon, swimming, paddling. It's all an interesting beast. They're individual sports, but with a team focus. And Kamini is a master of creating a team focus with an individual sport. And I've been fortunate enough not to just paddle like, in an OC2 with her, out there playing, but I've also paddled some, OC6s and some dragon boats. And yeah, there's an intensity to Kam. She's got a game face, and she's got a plan, but if you fail to plan, you plan to fail, right? Like, it's cliche, but do the work and the rest will follow. But Kamini has one of the biggest hearts that you'll ever find in the sport, probably next to, a bunch of people. But honestly, for somebody like myself who has experienced it firsthand, and when I think of Kamini, I mean, Andrea, in my little view, you guys are sitting side by side, but you bring out the best in each other. When you look at a coaching staff, you don't want coaches to be similar. You want them to complement each other, right? So it's interesting. You talked about the good guy, bad guy, but your coaching styles, I think, complement each other well. It's just too bad that you guys are so far away for those of us in the East, and we do need to continue to build the East, because I would really like to go to Samoa, but I think you already had the time trials. But anyway, Kamini, thank you for all that you've done in the world of paddling, all that you've brought, all that you will continue to bring, and for being exactly your authentic self, because that's what makes you the best possible person for every person that you've interacted with. So thank you.
Do we have anybody else who'd like to say something before I just sort of wrap up and hand it over to Kamini? So somebody said something about Kamini's got so many more years in her, and yeah, I think she's barely turned 50, and very early to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. But Kamini, what you have achieved in your lifetime, we have a footnote in your bio that says update every year, because we know this is going to go on for another 20 years at least of you racking up achievements and growing your fan base. So Connie, last year you were our last speaker. You talked about Jackie Weber, and that was very heartfelt. So the floor is yours. Take your time, say whatever you want.
Oh, well, thank you, Graham. And thank you, you guys. Those were, that's very heartwarming words. And it's a real honor to be inducted, and it's a real surprise to hear people say, you know, I guess credit me for the characteristics that I have striven for, and I have hope that I have exuded, you know, including the bad cop thing. You know, it's, as I was listening to everybody being inducted, it just, congratulations to everybody. By the way, it's an honor to be inducted with you. And what was coming to mind was these sort of three facets of what I think the rest of you probably aim to do too, is, or find value from, is, you know, you come into a sport, like I came in at 14, which is why my resume is so long, is that it's been a lot of years. But you know, Hugh said propped up, we're all propped up on Andrea's shoulders, so many of us, and I've been propped up through since I was 14 by so many people. And that feeling of somebody willing to invest their time in making you a better person and helping you reach your goals. And it's always astounded me. It's always astounded me that Andrea's there for me. It's always astounded me that Jackie Weber was so there for me. And everybody who has been, you know, amazing. So that feeling of being worthy of that. And then the other feeling of having teammates and saying, you know, I think most of us go into teams being a little bit nervous about how we're going to fit in, how we're going to be a valuable member of that team, how we're going to wrap our knowledge or our strength or our affection around our teammates in a way that's going to be productive, and that they're going to do the same for us. And that I've had so many amazing teammates through this sport, you know, Leanne, Sheila, others of you here and not here, and that we've been able to so much like that energy to be able to go and succeed on an international stage. Because as a couple of the people said, suggested, that my passion is really about making people be world champions. I love introducing people to the love of the sport, but I really love the innovation and the energy that goes into creating world champions and being part of crews that can go onto that stage and show that Canadians, you know, we're pretty darn tough. And then the other third part of it is that feeling that you've made a difference to somebody else. So I really appreciate Leanne's words onto that, Sheila's words into that, is that everything that we learn and work towards, everything that I feel like I've learned and I work towards, it only means something because it gets passed on to somebody else. And being a sprint paddler, that's ingrained. There's no secrets. If you know something, you tell somebody. Coaches came from all over. They would tell me stuff. They'd invite me into their club. If you know something and it can make somebody better or make them have a better experience, then you share it. And it's so touching or valuable to me to have been able to have people in my sports, you know, in this environment that have allowed me to share what I know or what I feel I know, and to take it and make it their own. So, you know, that's been so valuable, and I really appreciate everybody on this call and everybody in this community. And CORA, oh my God. I mean, there's a lot of sport organizations out there, but CORA, volunteer run, they have grants for things. A lot of work into both grassroots and international level. And I can't thank the people, you know, who've been in CORA, on the CORA board, on the committees since the beginning, like not like all of you guys on now, but the ability of that organization to function and support us is unbelievable. So a big thanks to you too. And that's it. Thanks everybody. And thank you, Graham, for this honor. I really appreciate your work in this.
Hey, you're the best, as Jack would say. Hey, Leanne, are you going to make sure you got the record button going so that we save this?
Yep, I've got it.
All right. I'm going to play this back a few times. This was phenomenal. They get better each time. I can hardly wait till year 3.
I think we had one more person that wanted to add something to comedies.
Bring it on. Bring it on. This is why we do this.
Was that me? I was going to say something.
Yeah, we've got you. We've got Penelope, and we've got you as well.
Okay.
Go ahead, Penelope.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Annie. I bow.
I just was going to say I've had the honor of knowing Comedy as a young athlete when she was a teenager with Jackie when they were on the dragon boat team years ago in False Creek. And then I was lucky enough to be in Australia and see her just a few years back, 2019 or whatever it was, 2018, 19, I can't remember, but she was doing the OC1 out on the open, out on the ocean there. And she has such a resume in between, but it was just so wonderful to see, what amazing skills she had over the years, and also just seeing her coaching at a really high level in Prague and different times over the years. Just always been so impressed by her ability to inspire and to be a role model and hold herself to that high standard the whole time, and just keep pushing and developing herself as an athlete and her skill set. So interested and so obsessed and in love with the sport, and just showing, that kind of inspiration to others. It's been wonderful to see that. So that's all I want to say.
Hi. I'm a little outside here. I don't know how many of you know me. I'm Andrea's partner, and I managed a few teams and what do you call that thing? Steering a few teams, yes, in Dragon Boat. But what I'd like to say, I want to say, like, as an over thing, because I absolutely totally acknowledge Comedy. I honor her. I acknowledge every one of you. And what I want to say from outside of things, if you will, I'm so blown away with this today. We love a community. What I'm getting, and I think Rosemary said it beautifully, was sort of like the passing of the torch. No, that was Wendy. Contributing. You all have made a huge difference to people's lives. And that's what we need on this planet. And I love it, for people to strive for their personal best, to be all they can be. And I just want to acknowledge all of you for being the stand of that. So thank you.
I don't think we could have had a better ending. Thank you so much, Penelope, for sharing that with us. And thank you everyone for staying with us. I know this call went longer than our usual ones do, but as Graham said, the sharing of these stories, the sharing and honoring of our builders, our founders, our contributors, our innovators, we can't thank all of you enough. Those of you that have come before us, those of you that are part of us now, those of you that will come after us, you are our sport. We are our sport as we go together. So thank you everyone who stuck with us. Those of you, especially in the East, it's well past bedtime. And those of you that are watching this online, maybe years down the road, this is November 5th, 2022 right now. And yeah. This is our CORA 2021 induction to the Hall of Fame, and this is just the second year we're doing this, and there's way more to come. So thank you everyone for being here tonight. Thank you to all our speakers, and thank you everyone for all the work that you put in and continue to put in, day out. Whether you're on our list so far or will be on our list in the future, keep doing what you do in your communities. And if you don't know, if you have a passion and you don't know what to do, but you want to do something, fire us a message at CORA. Send us a message. We're here to help out. That's why we have Canadian Outrigger Racing Association. Send us a message. Find us through the website. We are here to help. We want to help. This is our passion to do so. So thank you everyone, and have a good weekend and good night.
Okay, just a couple of things. First of all, CORA AGM is coming up on November the 20th. Please tune in for that via Zoom. And also, as Leanne just mentioned, if you're interested in furthering yourself within, with CORA, we're looking for directors. Please, there is a nomination form on the CORA website. I believe there's a post regarding the AGM, or there's a pull down menu, CORA AGM, and on that web page there is a link to the nomination form. So please, if you know of somebody who would be willing to serve on the CORA board, or if you yourself would like to serve on the CORA board, please submit a nomination. Okay.
Or if you just want to be part of a committee, let us know.
Yes. That's right. You don't need to be a director to be on one of the committees. So, get in contact with us. And directorship responsibilities, we have a meeting once a month, first Wednesday of every month during the year. So, your level of involvement can vary. So.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Have a good night. Way to go, Leanne. Record that and let's